Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Kongos called Egomaniac. So one of the easiest benefits of being a music critic is that you tend to be ahead of the curve when it comes to whatever hits in the mainstream eventually or on the radio. But that's not saying I can't get surprised. And in 2014, that definitely happened thanks to a quiet re-release from a newly picked up South African band called Kongos and their massive sleeper hit, Come With Me Now. A track that never really got huge in the US except on the rock charts, but was nearly inescapable in Canada. It says that song was absolutely awesome and ended up topping my list for my favorite hit songs of 2014. I had no problem whatsoever with hearing a lot of this song. And yet, it didn't seem like Kongos was able to notch a second hit in Canada just yet. And going into their discography, I can kind of explain why. Kongos is a band of four brothers, and even in the style of blending alternative rock with Kwaito, a South African style of sampling and looping that's probably closest to UK garage, they're a weird as hell group. For one, they got a knack for off-kilter melodic grooves with a surprising amount of grime, and yet their production is often clean and spacious enough to highlight some pretty damn great, almost pop-inspired hooks. And that's before they introduced the pedal steel, the accordion, the inverted samples, and an uncanny ability to leap from groove to groove, coupled with lyrics that are a lot smarter than you would typically expect, and a hell of a lead performance from Dylan Kongos, although every member of the band does sing. The band released their sophomore album Lunatic in 2012 in South Africa, before self-releasing it later in the States, and yet just before the band was about to give up and move on to new material, Epic found them, signed them, and re-released Lunatic to press their advantage. And for a rock band in 2014, the level of mainstream success that Come With Me Now had, which went platinum as a single, was both thrilling and kind of dangerous. Even though I'd make the argument that Kongos were far more than a novelty and had some serious chops, the eclectic instrumentation, the demented subject matter, meant that they had to stick the landing or risk being branded as one-trick ponies. So, did they pull it off with their newest album, Egomaniac? Well, here's the thing. This is the sort of album where I can't quite say there's a song with the same sort of instant modern classic sound that you get with Come With Me Now, but that's not to disparage the quality of this record, which really is pretty damn great all the way through. It's not perfect. I'm convinced that Kongos are yet to make an outright classic record that would blow everybody's mind, but Egomaniac is the sort of album that shows a band refining their strengths while expanding their sound and keeping the writing incredibly sharp. In short, if you're looking to cover modern rock, while it might be kind of easy to ignore or forget about this album, it definitely deserves a lot of attention because it is awesome. Of course, the reason that most people will disregard this record are the steps that it actually takes away from a conventional rock sound towards something that's a little bit leaner, sharper, and a fair bit meaner. The genre bending is still here, but instead of elements of reggae or alternative country, there's more of an electronic or even pop influence with the sharper beats instead of the demented, textured grooves that initially sucked me in. And I'm kind of a mixed opinion of how well that works. I've always wished that their production had a little bit more bite and texture, a little bit more of an earthy edge overall, but unlike so many others in this vein, they've nearly always managed to balance out the melodic elements courtesy of the guitar, the darker buzzing synths, or the accordion. Consider I Want It Free, which on first listen might seem to be pulling from nearly an identical groove to Come With Me Now, but then they inject these weedy little melodic fragments that squeal across the mix, a slightly spikier groove, and a huge bridge that swells on a cushion of liquid guitars that really sounds fantastic. And that's one thing that demands a lot of attention. For as much as Kongos has an eclectic instrumental palette, from the cavernous electronics on Autocorrect to the ghostly hollowness of 2 in the Morning and parts of Where I Belong and The World Would Run Better, to the wiry popping of Look At Me that features the fantastic melodic mutation that twists across the low thrum of the melody across multiple keys on the post-chorus, to I Don't Mind, which can probably be best described as a fusion of funk, country, and Irish folk with that central guitar rock and a huge chorus. This is all a band that will deliver a huge hook every time to back up the melodies. These songs are ridiculously catchy. And make no mistake, even though these mixes give the instrumentation more room to breathe, there's a commitment to dynamics that never feels the need to rely on reverb to land impact. I've already mentioned I Want It Free, but the real center comes with Repeat After Me, with the ominous bass-heavy crescendo, the rich melodic swell anchored in this brittle guitar lick, and the heavy layering of the backing vocals. It really has a ton of impact. Now, I'll admit right out of the gate that I prefer Kongos when they get a little bit darker and crazier. One of the reasons I've always wished their production get a little bit rougher to match the darker tones in the melodies and lyrics, but Egomaniac writes a tricky line between outright alienation and songs that go a little bit brighter on the hook, like the excellent Closer If You Could, which relies more on ramshackle guitars. Even though I will say songs like Hey You, Yeah You, and The World Would Run Better really only land a lot of impact from me off of their hooks and less off the oddly incredibly stiff synth lines. It could have afforded a little bit more flow with maybe a slightly more defined guitar lick or bass. Granted, one of the reasons why Kongos deliver so strongly are the vocals from all the brothers, all of which who contribute lead vocals to certain songs and yet come together for these huge choruses that sound better than ever. I can't quite say I can tell the difference between all of them yet and put names to each of the brothers' voices, but there's no outright weakness here that I can hear as the songs span raw stomping shouts to more earnest ballads to more desperate and raw material that I really like. And hell, even though I probably prefer the rougher side a little more, the vocals on the ballads, they kind of remind me of Brandon Flowers of the Killers, a little bit more of an edge, and that's only a net positive. Of course, one of the hidden weapons of Kongos material is their songwriting, and the title sums it up aptly. Egomania. And it highlights the very tricky line that Kongos are trying to walk here, providing commentary on arrogance and ego, all the while highlighting exactly why it can be so damn appealing. In a bizarre way, I'm reminded a little bit of Kesha's better songs, which walk the line between ruckus party girl and commenting on it. And just like her, Kongos are on that ego trip and are wringing as much ludicrous bombast out of it as they can, and yet they're also smart enough to place it all in perspective and context, not just showing how fun it is, but how much it comes with a certain amount of self-delusion and entitlement, with autocorrect being the shining example of that, and at the same time, the massive insecurity that tends to lurk beneath it all. It becomes very quickly apparent that some of that ego is a mask and a cultivated image that they're trying to keep up, and one that falls away fairly quickly when trying to get what they really want or reflecting a loss, like the haunting 2 in the morning. And yet, at the facade, as it falls away, you get songs like Look at Me that aren't just looking for the audience's attention, but for validation of their existence in the void. And even though the smart decision would be to walk away, that's not what they really want. They have to keep up the image, they have to keep up their appearances, and that leads to bad decisions that exploit those willing to validate them, that leaves them desperate and ashamed, especially when you have songs like Repeat After Me, which shows them trying to break away from false religions and trying to confront reality, or perhaps give up some of that privilege that fuels into that ego and entitlement, a surrender that's far harder to sign, a defense of one ego that's far harder to abandon. And I really love the ending that comes with If You Could, that when confronting in the morning and sifting through the wreckage of shattered ego and arrogance, often coming even from good intentions, it's the acknowledgement that not only will you often see yourself get bypassed along the way, but that if you want to start over and do it all again, that's not how life works, and you're not really going to get that chance. That sort of answer, that sort of conclusion, it's frank, it's kind of brutal, but it's real. And despite how much punch all the hedonistic thrills of the album that they might bring, there's a sense of weight and a finality to the ending of this album that sticks with you incredibly well. It's a gut punch, but it's a great one. In short, man, I really like this album. Again, I wouldn't quite call it the best of the year among classics. There's a few tracks I don't feel quite hit the same amount of impact. I do think that Kongos brought a little bit more grit to the table. I wish they would. A little bit more texture to these mixes, but the album is still remarkably cohesive, smartly written, and ridiculously catchy. In a just world, Kongos would be dominating mainstream radio with Egomaniac, but as it is, they're getting a very strong 8 out of 10 from me and a huge recommendation. Folks, let's not see these guys become one-hit wonders, because this is a damn great album and definitely deserves all your support. Check this out, it's awesome. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Yeah, I had to get this album. I've been listening to it so much. It's so much fun. I really did like it. Not quite the best of the year, but hell, the poll's up there, so if you guys want to comment on it, you think it is the best of the year, let me know. But beyond that, I really like this. But outside of that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, I will try to give them a listen. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.